The reservation was for 8 o'clock. At 7:19, Chef Dominic was on the kitchen floor. He had felt it coming for 20 minutes, the tightening across his chest that he had told himself was stress, then tension, then the particular psychosomatic pressure of a man who had not slept more than 5 hours in 11 days. He had not told anyone. He had kept moving through the prep, calling tickets, correcting the temperature on the sauce reduction, doing the thing that professional kitchens require, which is that you do not stop until the kitchen stops you. The kitchen stopped him at 7:19, 6 minutes after the first reservation of the evening had been seated, and 41 minutes before Adrian Cole walked through the front door. The kitchen went silent in the way kitchens go silent when something is wrong. Not all at once, but in a wave, station by station, as each cook registered what had fallen and what it meant. Lena was at his side in 4 seconds. She called 911 in 8. The paramedics were on their way. Carter Holt was in the manager's office reviewing the evening's cover numbers when the manager knocked and told him. He came to the kitchen doorway, looked at the situation, Dominic on the floor, Lena on the phone, 6 line cooks standing at their stations with the particular paralysis of people who have just lost the person who told them what to do next, and did what he always did when a situation presented itself clearly. He calculated. The calculation took approximately 40 seconds. He said, "We need to close the kitchen for the evening. I'll handle the front of house." Lena looked at him. She said, "Adrian Cole is booked for 8 o'clock. He said, "I'm aware. We'll comp her meal elsewhere. Call the front desk." He was already reaching for his phone. He did not see Jerome set down his gloves. Before we continue, if you believe that a man's worth is not determined by the work he is given, but by what he carries into that work every single day, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. His full name was Jerome Antoine Beaumont, and he had been the head chef of Maison Rouge in New Orleans from the age of 26 to the age of 31. 5 years during which the restaurant had earned a James Beard nomination, a feature in 3 national publications, and the specific reputation that attaches to a kitchen where something genuine is happening. He had left New Orleans at 31. His mother had suffered a stroke. His younger brother had 3 children and a job that could not be left, and a wife whose health was also failing, and Jerome was the one without children, the one whose kitchen ran well enough that he could train someone to cover for a few months, which was what he told himself and what he told his sous chef when he handed over the keys. The few months had not ended the way few months usually end. His mother's recovery was slow and then not a recovery. His brother's youngest had medical needs that required presence and money. Jerome's savings covered 14 months. His mother's care covered the rest of what he had. He found work in a kitchen in the city he had moved to, not as a chef, because the references required follow-up he did not have time to manage while caring for his mother, and the chef positions required evening hours he could not reliably keep while his mother needed medication at 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. He found work as a dishwasher at Maison Calvet. The hours were early. The pay was steady. The work required nothing of him that he could not give. He told himself it was temporary. 22 years had passed. He had not told anyone at Maison Calvet what he had been, not because he was ashamed. He had thought about this carefully, and shame was not what he felt, but because the kitchen had its hierarchy, and he had learned, in the years of working within it, that announcing a former life to people who were looking at your present position required them to recalibrate something they had already decided, and the recalibration was never comfortable for anyone. He preferred the present to be what it was. He preferred to know what he knew without being asked to prove it. He knew the kitchen. He knew it the way you know a place you have watched for 22 years from the closest possible vantage point. Every station, every burner, every cold storage shelf, every supplier's delivery schedule, every chef's technique, and every chef's weakness. He had watched 6 head chefs cycle through that kitchen. He had watched each of them establish their systems and their signatures and their failures. He had never once commented. He had washed the dishes they produced, and he had noted, in his small, worn notebook, the things he would have done differently. He set down his gloves at 7:23. He picked up a clean chef's apron from the hook beside the dish station. They were always spares, the kitchen required them, and he tied it behind his back with the specific efficiency of someone who has tied an apron 10,000 times and does not need to think about it. He walked to the pass. He looked at the prep that had been completed before Dominic went down. He looked at the tickets. He looked at the cold storage inventory on the whiteboard. Lena saw him first. She opened her mouth. He said, "I need you on garnish and plating. Marcus on the fish station. I'll take the stove." She looked at him for 1 second. In 4 years of working beside Jerome, of watching him move through the kitchen, of the particular quality of attention he brought to every surface and vessel that passed through his hands, of the 2 occasions on which she had watched him correct a sauce temperature by smell alone when the thermometer was being used elsewhere, of the notebook she had glimpsed once without meaning to, she had known something was there. She had never asked. The kitchen's hierarchy had not invited the question. She moved to the garnish station. Carter Holt was still on his phone in the kitchen doorway when Jerome lit the first burner. He looked up. He said, "Who is that?" The manager, standing beside him, said, "That's Jerome. He's been our dishwasher for 22 years. Carter said, "Why is he at the stove?" The manager said quietly, "I don't know, but look at his hands." Carter looked at Jerome's hands. He looked at the way they moved across the prep, checking temperatures, assessing quantities, making the rapid series of small decisions that a stove requires in the first 4 minutes before a service begins. He had seen hands move like that before. He had eaten in enough restaurants at enough owners' tables to have watched enough chefs begin a service. He had never seen it in a dishwasher's apron. He did not stop him. He told himself later that he had stayed in the doorway because he needed to assess the situation. That was true. It was not the only truth. The other truth was that something was happening at that stove that his phone call could wait for. The first course went out at 7:51, 9 minutes late, which Carter had already calculated and which the front-of-house manager had handled by sending complimentary amuse-bouche to every table with an apology for the delay and no explanation. Adrienne Cole was seated at table 7 at 8 o'clock precisely. She received the amuse-bouche with the expression of someone who has received 10,000 amuse-bouche and can tell in the first bite whether the kitchen is worth her time tonight. She ate it. She set down her spoon. She made a very small note on the notepad she had not opened until this moment. What came from that kitchen over the next 90 minutes was not Dominic's menu. Jerome had looked at Dominic's menu and had seen it for what it was, technically proficient, safely classical, the menu of a chef who had learned to protect a rating rather than earn one. He had kept the framework. He had done something else inside it. He had cooked the way he had cooked at Maison Rouge, with the specific freedom of a person who has nothing to protect and everything to give, who has been carrying something for 22 years and has, tonight, finally been handed a place to put it down. The lamb was the thing. The third course, a rack of lamb with a reduction that had no business being as complex as it was given the constraints of the prep time and the available ingredients, arrived at table 7 at 9:14. Adrienne Cole cut into it. She brought it to her mouth. She set her fork down. She looked at her notepad. She looked toward the kitchen. She looked at her plate. She picked up her fork and finished everything on it. Carter had stayed in the kitchen doorway for the entire service. He had not made his closure call. He had watched Jerome cook with the specific attention of a man who has spent a career assessing value and is watching something whose value he cannot yet place in any existing category. He watched Jerome move between stations with the unhurried authority of someone who has always known where everything is. He watched Lena follow his direction with a trust that had not been established tonight. He watched the food go out and watched the kitchen find, in the space of 90 minutes, a coherence it had apparently been missing. The service ended at 10:40. The last ticket cleared. The kitchen staff began to break down their stations in a silence that was different from the silence at 7:19, Not the silence of crisis, but the silence of people who have just been through something and do not yet have the language for it. Jerome untied his apron. He hung it on the hook beside the dish station. He picked up his rubber apron. He returned to the dish station and began to process the backlog from the service. Carter crossed the kitchen. He stood beside the dish station. He said, "Jerome?" Jerome did not stop working. He said, "Yes, sir." Carter said, "How long have you been a chef?" Jerome said, "I haven't been a chef here." Carter said, "That's not what I asked." Jerome set down the rack he was rinsing. He turned and looked at Carter Holt with the steady, dark eyes of a man who has been looked at for 22 years without being seen and is now deciding how to receive being seen. He said, "Since I was 19, ran my own kitchen from 26 to 31. Carter said, "What happened at 31? Jerome said, "Family, then time." Carter was quiet for a moment. He said, "The lamb. What was in the reduction?" Jerome told him. He gave it in the specific language of a chef, quantities, timing, the 2 substitutions he had made based on what was available, the reason for each substitution. He gave it without referring to any notes. He gave it the way you give something you have known for a long time. Carter listened. When Jerome finished, Carter said, "I want to offer you the head chef position." Jerome looked at him. Carter said, "Dominic's prognosis is going to keep him out of the kitchen for at minimum 3 months. I need someone who can run this kitchen. I watched you run it tonight." Jerome said, "I run the dish station." Carter said, "Not anymore. If you want." Jerome was quiet. He looked at the dish station, the racks, the spray arm, the backlog from 90 minutes of service still waiting. He looked at the stove across the kitchen where the burners had been turned off and the surface was being wiped down by a line cook who had spent the evening watching Jerome with an expression he had not quite been able to control. He said, "I have conditions." Carter said, "Tell me." Jerome said, "Lena gets promoted to sous chef with a salary that reflects it. The kitchen staff gets a full review. I'll tell you who's underpaid and by how much. And the dish station gets a second person because one person cannot maintain that volume alone and has not been able to for 6 years, and nobody has fixed it." Carter looked at him for a moment. He said, "Those are fair conditions." Jerome said, "I know they are." The review published 3 weeks later. Adrienne Cole's piece ran in the national publication that had been covering Maison Calvet for 11 years. She described the meal in the specific language she used when something had genuinely surprised her, which was rare, which her readers knew was rare, which was why the piece was shared 17,000 times before the end of the week. She described the lamb reduction. She described the structural intelligence of a menu that had been, she sensed, reimagined under pressure in real time. She said, "Whoever was cooking that night understood that the purpose of a kitchen is not to demonstrate technique, but to give people something they will carry home." She did not know who had been cooking. She wrote to the restaurant to ask. Carter wrote back. He told her. She requested an interview with Jerome. He declined, which she noted in a follow-up piece as the most interesting detail of the entire story, which she was correct about. He had a kitchen to run. He had been waiting 22 years to run it. He did not need to explain himself to anyone. He had Lena on sous chef. He had 2 people on the dish station. He had a notebook full of things he had been writing down for 22 years. And now he had a stove. He lit the first burner of the morning service and did not look back. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of courage, grace, and the small human decisions that turn out to matter more than anyone knew. And tell us in the comments, have you ever watched someone surprise an entire room with what they were carrying inside?